Okay, this set of notes is reviewing completing the square. This is what we did the Thursday and Friday before we left. So if you look back at notes days 9 and 10, you'll see what we did. I also have an optional video that you can watch where I worked out days 9 and 10 in complete form. So you can actually go back and watch those too. This is a review, so it might seem like it's going a little bit faster. So if you missed a day, if you don't remember doing it at all, go back and watch the full videos because I'll take a little bit more time. I'll show some extra hints in those videos than what I'm going to do on this one because this one's just reviewing. Okay, so when we complete the square, I talked about it a little bit in my last video. Completing the square is going to help us write our equations in vertex form. And the really important part is this section right here. And that's why we're completing the square, so that we have a perfect square trinomial. So again, I talked about that in the last video on factoring and pointed out what that looks like. Again, if you want to see that in detail, go back and watch my day 9 video and I'll show you that. But when we go to do this, if you remember, we're going to group our x's together. So in the one parenthesis, we put x squared plus 26x plus blank, and then plus 50, and then minus blank. Remember, when we do the plus and the minus blank, it's because we don't actually want to change the value of the problem. And so we do 1 plus and 1 minus because it actually cancels each other out. To find what goes inside the blanks, you take half your middle term and square it. So half of 26 is 13. 13 squared is 169. And so that's what goes inside your blanks. Now again, what we just created is a perfect square trinomial. If you took the time to actually factor it, you'll see that you're finding numbers that will multiply to give you 169, but will add to give you 26, and it's 13 and 13. It will always be the same number twice, or you didn't find the right number that goes in the blank. And so then to finish it off, we do x. Please do not put x squared, just an x goes in the parenthesis. Half your middle term, so plus 13, because it's a positive 13. Close parentheses, squared. The square goes on the outside, using the same exact part right here. Again, if we were to work this out and factor it, we'd get x plus 13, the quantity of x plus 13 times the quantity of x plus 13. Same answer twice, so I just make it squared. And then all you do is just type this part into the calculator, and so we get minus 119. So that is vertex form. And then just make sure you watch the directions. That's the first bullet. And then the second bullet wants us to actually list the vertex, the axis symmetry, max or min, and then at what point. And then if it's same, narrow, wide. So this one, the vertex, is going to be, remember, opposite sign. So negative 13 and negative 119. The axis of symmetry is x equals negative 13. Make sure you put the x equals. And then because it's positive, a is positive, it's a min, and then at whatever your y value is. So at negative 119. And then same narrow wide also deals with your a value, and because a is 1, it's the same. So again, this numbers 1, 2, and 5 are all from day 9 notes, and 3, 4, and 6 are from day 10 notes. So if you want to go back and look, just so you know. All right, so then number 2. Again, we follow the same process over and over again. So y equals, we're going to group anything that has the x's in it together. So x squared minus 12x. And then plus blank. Because that's a minus 2, I'm going to put a minus 2, but then it's always a minus blank. This sign depends on whatever your c value is. So since c is negative 2, I have to put a negative 2. So again, what we're really doing is taking something in standard form and then putting it into vertex form. And again, that's important to know because next week we're going to go between all the different forms. So this is from standard form to vertex form. Same way, half the middle term squared, and so 36 goes in our blanks. And so then I get y equals, and then an x. Half your middle term, half of negative 12 is a negative 6 squared. You work all of that part out together, so minus 38. And then don't forget the second part. So the vertex, opposite sign, so 6 and negative 38. Your axis of symmetry is x equals 6. There, again, a is positive 1, so there's a min at negative 38. And again, because a is 1, it's the same. All right, so the next one, same thing, okay? But as you start to notice, oh, there's a number, technically, in front of the x squared term. So same process. This is day 10 notes, though. There's one extra step, but then everything else is the same. If there's ever a number in front of the squared term, we're going to do y equals whatever that number is. I want you to put that out in front of the parentheses. So it's a negative 1. What you'll do is you're technically going to divide both of the x's, only the x's, by negative 1. So flip their signs in this case, but it might be more involved depending on the problem that you're on. So negative x squared divided by negative 1 is just x squared. Negative 6x divided by negative 1 is plus 6x. Everything else stays the same. Plus blank, bring down the c value, plus 20, always a minus blank, and then because you started with the negative 1 in front, you have to end with the negative 1 in the back. If I were to take this negative 1 and distribute into this parenthesis, negative 1 times blank, and that's why we have to do negative 1 times blank. Okay, so again, we don't really want to change the problem, and so if I just leave that off, it ends up changing the problem. Okay, everything else, the exact same. Half the middle term squared goes in both my blanks. So half the middle term is 3. 3 squared is 9. And so then we'll do y equals, just don't forget to bring down that negative 1. And then the parenthesis part's the same. So then it's x plus 3, half the middle term. And then squared. When you get to this side, please, if you're using a calculator, type all of this in together. Otherwise, you'll do the wrong order of operations and you will get the wrong answer. So just be really careful when you do that. And so you get plus 29 and then just finish it off. The vertex is negative 3, 29. The axis of symmetry is x equals, negative 3. Now, this time, A is in front of the parenthesis, is negative 1. Because A is negative 1, I know it's now going to be a max, and it's a max at 29. And then because A is still 1, where we use the absolute value, because A is still 1, it's still the same. All right, so for the rest of them, I'm not going to change colors. So I'm just going to go ahead and work them out. Same process for everything else. I'm just going to stick to one color, though, to finish them off. Okay, so again, number 4 is just like what we did on day 10 notes. A is no longer 1, so I'm going to factor that out first. So y equals negative 2. Divide everything that has an x with it, an x in it, by negative 2. So x squared minus 10x. It's one place where we make some big common mistakes. And then plus blank, minus 10, minus blank, times negative 2. And then you fill in your blanks. Half of 10 squared is 25. And so y equals negative 2. And then we have x minus 5 squared. Again, work all of this out at one time. You end up with a positive 40. So your vertex is 540. Your axis of symmetry is x equals 5. Again, your A value this time is negative 2. So since A is a -2, then we know that it's going to be a max at 40. And because it's in 2, it makes it narrow. Remember, if A is greater than 1, it's narrow. If A is 1, it's the same. And if A is between 0 and 1, then it's going to be wide. All right, so we'll do the same thing again. And again, if I were you at this point, I'd pause the video and I'd try to see if you can do 5 and 6 totally by yourselves. Again, that way if you can't, when you come to the check-in, then you'd be able to ask me any questions that you'd need help on. You'd know where to ask a question. So on this one, we'll do y equals, A is 1, so we don't have to do anything out in front. If you want to put a 1 in front, that's totally fine. If you want to keep the same pattern and that helps you out, that's okay. And then -10, minus blank. Same thing here. The blank is technically just being multiplied by 1, but 1 times itself is just itself. So I don't write it, but if it helps you, go ahead and put a 1 outside of that. That's fine. Now this one's one where we start to panic and we're like, oh, but 5 divided by 2 is a decimal. You have a calculator. It's totally fine if you have decimal answers. Please don't round the decimals. The decimals need to be left. It won't be an accurate answer. You're actually changing values of the problem if you try to round the decimal, so please just leave it all the way out. So half of 5 and then squared is just 6.25. Totally fine. Okay. And so then y equals, inside the parenthesis is x and then half your middle term. Half the middle term is plus 2.5 and then squared. This side's minus 16.25. Again, don't let any of the decimals bother you. It's totally fine. Nothing wrong with them. And so your vertex, opposite sign, so negative 2.5 and negative 16.25. Your axis of symmetry is x equals negative 2.5. A is 1. So since A is 1 and it's positive, it's a minimum at negative 16.25. And because A is 1, it's the same. So one more to try. All right, so same process. No, but there's a number in front of the squared term, so don't forget to factor that out. And then you divide both of your x's by that number. So 4 divided by 4 is the 1, so x squared, and then minus 2x plus blank plus the 4 that's right here. Don't divide that, just the one with the x's. Minus blank, and then with your blank, multiplied by 4. Half the middle term squared. Half of 2 is 1. 1 squared, 1. And so y equals 4, and then x, half of that, negative 1 squared. Again, typing all of this in at one time, oh, we get 0. I can leave it just like this, or I'm going to use a different color just so you know. Or if you wanted to, put the plus 0 at the end if that helps you out. You don't need to have the plus 0, but if you'd like to put that on, you're more than welcome to. So your vertex is 1, 0. The 0 might help because I don't want you to forget the vertex is always an ordered pair, so I wouldn't want you to leave that number off. But if it's not there, it's the understood 0 in that case. The axis of symmetry is x equals 1. A this time is 4. Now it's a positive 4, so since it's positive, it's a min at 0. And then because it's a 4, it makes it narrow. Again, we didn't have any examples of anything that was wide, but wide would be any number that's between 0 and 1. So again, hopefully this helps to go back over things. If you're still looking at this and you're a little bit confused and maybe you missed either Thursday or Friday, the 12th or the 13th, you might then want to go back and watch the full videos. But this is just a quick overview of what we did for 2 days in class. Because you should hopefully remember once I start showing you how to complete the square. So again, this is taking something that's in standard form and putting it into vertex form. Important to be able to do because next week we're going to be going between the 3 different forms. So I hope this helps you. Otherwise, make sure you have a question that you can ask me at the check-in.